This was back in 1995. I was 15 years old, living in River Falls, Wisconsin. I had a 10 p.m. curfew. My house was a bit outside of town, and I walked everywhere. This particular evening was pretty normal until around 9:45. I hung out at my best friend's house playing video games, drank a case of Mountain Dew, ate shitty delivery pizza, basic 90s teenager summer shit. The walk from his house to mine was one traveled on the regular, at least 3 times per week, if not more. I knew it took exactly 40 minutes door to door. Just like every other day, I left at 9:20 p.m. on the nuts, never a minute before or after. The majority of my walk was a single road leading out of town, so there were no streetlights or houses or anything really until the patch of land the nearby university used as an airstrip, and even this provided no real illumination, simply a few small runway lights, if you could even call them that. Once I reached the landing strip, I know I'm 15 minutes from home, and I checked my watch to confirm that nothing was different this time. After checking my watch again with nothing out of the ordinary, I see what seems to be an incoming plane. I thought it would be cool to watch it land right over the top of me until I realize it's not going the right direction. The runway was 45 degrees to the road. This light was coming directly at me as if to land on the road. Confused, I looked at it. It got very bright and came at me so fast I felt blind for a few seconds. Then the light was gone. No plane landed anywhere. Not the road, not the runway, nothing. I shrug it off and march on. I kept my regular pace. I just looked at my watch. No need to think anything strange. I opened the front door to my mother on the phone. Very frazzled, she says, "Holy shit, he's home now. I'll call you back." Completely stumped as to what the hell was going on, I see the clock and nearly shat my pants. 11:40 p.m. My mother yelling at me, questioning me. I hear none of it, and I'm lost in my own head thinking, how can this be? It was 9:45 a few minutes ago. I just looked. Now obviously my mother did not, nor should she have, believed me when I told her this story. I told the truth, mainly because I couldn't think of a lie that would have caused me to be that late, but that just made me sound like a crazy person talking about aliens or whatever. For your information, I never said aliens. It's just what she thought I was implying. To this day, I have zero explanation for 2 hours of time just gone. Okay, so I'm about 27 years old in Nashville, Tennessee, but this story took place about 12 years ago. Back when I was living in Missouri, my family and I were from a small town there. It didn't have a population of more than 1,000 people. It was a closed society. Everybody knew everybody. You know, your cliche run-of-the-mill small town. But one Sunday morning, my brother and I were bored looking for something to do. So we decided we'd ride our bike down to our old elementary school. We were about halfway there when we noticed something odd. The path to our old school was straight ahead of us. To our left, there was a road that had never been there before. Keep in mind that the elementary school was less than a mile from the high school we attended, so we rode on this road almost daily. The road was different from the rest of the streets in the town. It was new and made of asphalt, unlike the other roads in our neighborhood. It's an ancient town. And along the sides of the street, there were tall red trees that didn't grow in our town or nearby cities, so we decided to go adventure down the road and see where it led. After walking down the street for a while, we felt something weird that I cannot describe, but it was cold. Not outside temperature, but our bodies were cold. The further we walked, we noticed a neighborhood with quite tall buildings in the back. My brother and I were shocked because our town was isolated from any big cities, at least an hour's drive to the nearest one. My brother insisted we keep going, but at that point, I was too scared to continue any longer. Finally, I convinced him to go back, and we did. We walked back and continued to the school. We spent an hour or two there. We were on our way back when we came across where the mysterious road was supposed to be. There was nothing there. We were both beyond baffled and immediately rode back to our house and asked our parents if they knew anything about the new road that had been built. They had no idea what we were talking about. We also asked about the new town nearby, and they looked at us like we were insane. My brother and I were both creeped out by this. We never saw the mysterious road again, or the mysterious town. One day at the beginning of this year, me, 26-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 26-year-old male, went for a big walk around the town we were living in at the time. It was the middle of the day, probably around 2 p.m., and we were both completely sober. At one point, we were on the side of the road in the jogging lane, and we saw a female child, around 12 years old if I had to guess, jogging. She was in our lane coming our way. I remember finding it strange for a child to be jogging on her own. There was no one else around, and it was a pretty remote area like a countryside road, but I didn't mention anything to my boyfriend. We were walking side by side, so I walked behind him so she could pass. I stopped seeing her for a few seconds, and when I see her again next to me, she's a full-grown woman in her mid-40s. He immediately looks at me in shock and asks, "Did you see that?" I asked him, did he also see a child turn into a woman, and he said yes. He said she never really left his sight, but as he blinked and looked again, she was no longer a child. We even looked back to confirm, and she was still the mid-40s woman. Since then, I've been noticing other small glitches. I don't know if they were always there and I just didn't pay attention, or if that started a whole chain of events. My wife, sister, and I are all avid backpackers. We spend a lot of time in the outdoors, but back in 2018, we decided to do pull-up camping with stargazing in Colorado as the main goal. We're from the Midwest. We used a light pollution map to find a remote camping area in the San Juan National Forest and planned to hike during the day and stargaze at night. The first day and night, the stars and trails were amazing, and we were all super stoked to be in the mountains and away from flat land. It was the clearest I've ever seen the Milky Way galaxy, and it was phenomenal. After the first night, we all got up early and decided to do another hike, this time following a small dirt forest road through the mountains. We all were having a great time and there was nothing but positive vibes. I mentioned that our hike felt more like a walk, since we were on a road, so we all agreed to take the first proper trail we came across. We had a GPS unit, map, and compass, so we weren't worried about getting lost. We finally come across a trail that ran perpendicular to the road and had a slight gradient, running down the mountain. Staying true to our word, we all agreed to see where it went and turned onto the trail. As soon as we left the road and stepped onto the trail, I had an unprovoked and overwhelming feeling of doom come over me. Suddenly, my excitement left me and I felt, almost instinctually, that I would be in serious danger if I went down this trail. This unprovoked feeling of doom was strange enough, but when my sister said, "Guys, I don't think we should go down this trail," and my wife responded, "Oh my God, you feel that too?" I lost my shit. We quickly returned to the road and continued our walk. We all agreed we had the same unprovoked sensation once we stepped onto the trail and could not come up with any logical explanation. I have never experienced anything like this, and it still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. My boyfriend and I went to the gas station to gas up. and I sat in the car while he went inside to pay. Saw a noticeable man in rolled-up jorts, thick boots, and a black tank top, just walking back and forth in front of the gas station talking to people. It was obviously strange behavior, but none of my business. So we moved on to our next destination, the grocery store, about 5 minutes down the road. We watched the guy still pacing back and forth in front of the gas station as we pulled out and made our way to the grocery store. We didn't hit any traffic, and it was a complete straight shot. We pulled in, immediately got out, and the same exact guy we saw pacing the gas station was walking outside of the grocery store. It was 100% the same guy, and we still have no idea how. There's no shortcuts or anything he could have taken. No idea how he got there before us. Still can't come up with an explanation for it all. Today I went to get my truck's oil changed. I was in the waiting room of the service place for about 20 minutes. I remember pulling into the service bay at exactly 12 p.m., according to the clock on the dash. This seemed correct because I left home at 11:55, according to my computer's time, and it only takes 5 minutes to get to the service station. When the oil service was done and I got back into my truck, the time on the dash still read 12 p.m. I thought maybe the service technicians had disconnected my battery for something and reset the clock. So when I got home, I pumped the hood and checked the battery. It was still covered in dust, and it was obvious that the wiring harness hadn't been disconnected or even touched. I thought that was weird and hopped back into my truck to set the clock to the proper time. Now it was reading 12:07. I looked at my watch to see the correct time, and it also said 12:07. I thought I was going crazy and had just misremembered what time it was. I usually have a very good sense of time. So I pulled out my phone and checked the time there. It said 12:27, so I set both my truck's time and my watch times forward to that. I know that both my truck and my watch were both accurately set before this, because the recent daylight savings time forced me to update them. What I don't understand is how both my truck and my watch missed out on a full 20 minutes at the same time. Did I drive through some glitch in the fabric of space-time and it put my truck and watch back 20 minutes? I have a full recollection of those missing 20 minutes, so it's not like I have 20 minutes unaccounted for in my memory, but my truck and watch seem to have missed out on those 20 minutes. Does anyone have any possible explanation for this? I, 40 female, went to the supermarket with my husband, 43 male, and son, 7 months old, last week. As usual, he stayed in the car with son while I went in. They usually park at the parent and child parking spot, right by the main entrance. However, because it was cold and raining, he left me right by the door before going parking. 15 minutes or so later, I come out and spot our car right in front of me. Walked by the back window where I see my kid's car seat, but nobody's in it. And then, as I walk to the front, I see an old lady sitting in the passenger seat all alone. She was gazing towards the front of the car, and I thought, gosh, I almost opened the door of the wrong car. Lucky she's not looking this way, or I could have scared her by trying to get in. So I kept walking for a couple of meters. It's a small parking lot, and couldn't see our car. So I called my husband. He answers the phone and I ask him where he's parked. And he says, right in front of the store, parent and child parking spot. I turn around and there he is, same car, and our child is strapped in his seat. Neither of them saw me or the lady that I saw in the car. I'm still doing mental gymnastics to explain it to myself, unsuccessfully. This is something I think about from time to time, and it doesn't make sense. Years ago, my good friend and I went to a hiking trail. She wanted me to come with her because part of the trail led to a waterfall/river area and it was a good day to go swimming. She had been there before to go swimming. I had not. We started the trail, and near the beginning was a map. We looked at it to figure out which direction to go in to get to the water, and she took a picture on her phone for reference. I'm not the best with remembering directions. We walked and followed the trail and made all the correct turns, and at one point we knew we should be near the water. There should have been a waterfall. We should have heard it. There was just trees and a path that went on. We were confused. So we tried to take another route, and soon enough, we ended up right back at the beginning part of the trail and saw the map again. We were suddenly right back by the parking lot. It felt like it took a much shorter time to reach the map again than it took us to get to the end where the water should have been. We walked at least a mile from the map, and within minutes of turning around, we were just right back where we started. We were both so bewildered, looked at each other and said, "What the hell?" I asked her if we just teleported. We laughed it off because there wasn't anything else to do. We never found the water that day. We just went back to the car and left. I have since been back to that trail and had no issue finding it. Looking back on this memory feels sort of dreamy, and I don't remember any fine details of our walk. Of course, it's possible that we just went the wrong way, but that doesn't explain the time lapse and how it took such a short amount of time to end up back at the beginning. I often wonder if something saved us from walking into a bad situation or something. I don't know. Wondering if anyone has had a similar experience or possible explanation. This happened last night. I was alone and driving through a green light, and I had one more stoplight ahead of me before I got onto the interstate. As I went through that first green light, I intrusively just thought about how so many people probably get T-boned going through green lights. I thought about how, if it were me, I probably wouldn't be able to see it coming, and I was thinking about someone hitting me from my left. The random thought went away, and I started to approach the second stoplight. There was a person in front of me, and they had a green light. As they went through the intersection, lo and behold, someone from their left flew through a red light and completely T-boned the driver in front of me. Glass went everywhere, and the sound of the impact was so loud. Everyone was okay, though. It could have been me if I had left my house a little sooner, and had it been me, I would have definitely been more freaked out, considering. However, I'm sure it was just a coincidence. Still, very bizarre to me. For context, my school isn't that big. For the freshmen, there are only 3 dorm halls to live in. The 3 halls make a little square with one side opened. I live in one of the side halls, which is north. The other one is south. The main building is facing the parking lot, and that's where the office is. On to the story. Today I was dropped off at the back of my dorm. I normally walk in through the back to avoid small talk with people in the front, as people normally stand in the front. At the back, I run into a good friend who lives in the room next to mine. We go up the elevator to the 4th floor and walk to our room. I unlock my room with my key, say bye to my friend, and walk into my room. I put my things down and run to the bathroom, which is right across from my room. Directly after that, I walk back to the elevator because I have a meeting with my advisor. I look around because it seems they've redecorated since I was last there. I go down the elevator, and when I walk out, I look forward and see my dorm directly in front of me. I turn around at the dorm I just walked out of, and it's the one facing south. It literally makes no sense because I know I went up the elevator with my friend who stays in the room next to mine, and my ID wouldn't let me go up the elevator in another hall anyways. I was at home resting, and it was around 9 in the evening. When I was about to go have a bath, I saw my mom standing in the kitchen. The kitchen and the bathroom are connected by the same hallway, and the kitchen's missing a door. She was looking at me over her shoulder. I knew it was her and not my imagination, because she was supposed to come back home around that time. I said, "Hey Mom, I'm going to take a bath." She hummed and nodded in response. Then I went to the bathroom to start filling up the bath, and when I went back to my room to fetch my towel, she was not in the kitchen anymore. Then, just as I was ready to enter my room, my father called me and told me to meet my mom and escort her home because she has a deep fear of the dark. But then I remembered that I saw her in the kitchen, and I told my dad that she'd been back already. My father just replied in his usual angry manner, and I complied like the doormat I am. Her phone and purse were there in the kitchen. It couldn't have been a hallucination, because me and my sister both heard her phone ring, and my sister rummaged through her purse, and I held my mom's phone. Then I put it back into the purse and left it where it was. I thought maybe she'd come back and probably decided to check things out around the property, if the doors are locked and lights are off, etc. I went to bathe, and after some time, my father was shouting at me saying that I had ignored him and other stuff like that. I responded that Mom's back already and is probably checking around the property. He said that she called him just now and asked for me to go and escort her. I did that. I dressed and went through the same hallway I mentioned. The purse was no longer in the kitchen. After I came back home, I asked my little sister about it, and she remembered everything. The call logs are still in my phone, but they're not in my mom's phone. I called her 2 times at 9:30 and 9:33 in the evening. No matter how I look at it, I just can't explain it. I have a huge maple in my backyard, 10-foot trunk big. Well, I remember when I moved in, and several times over the past couple of years I've lived here looking at it, knowing it needed to come down. There was a big piece that was cut off and had leaves and water in it, obviously rotten. Last weekend I called someone out to look at it since I have some money to pay for it. He comes out and looks at the tree, then asks me why I want it down. I say the big-ass hole that's filled with leaves and rotten on the side of it. He looks at me as if I'm crazy and says, "There's nothing wrong with the tree. It could use a trim, but that's about it." Now I know for a fact this tree was in bad shape. Even my wife said it was bad and needed to come down, but here it is now, fully healed, and everything's good. This is the first time anything like this has ever happened, so I sought out this sub to see what you think. I was making tomato soup as a comfort food because I was coming down with a cold, and I tried to switch the stove on, but it didn't do anything whatsoever. I checked outside to make sure there was no problem with the gas, and came back in and opened a window, just in case there was some kind of gas fault so the room didn't fill up or something. I don't know what I was expecting. The stove was completely off by the plug. No gas or electricity was running through it, and when I turned back from opening the window, my soup was piping hot with steam and bubbling. I literally cannot begin to explain it, but there was no steam when I came inside, turned to the window and turned back, and it was hot. I didn't see anything blurry or hear anything extraordinary. It was just done. This happened like a year ago, and I still have no explanation. I, female 27, have been renting my house for about 3 years now, and at the time I was living with my housemate. She was working from home due to COVID, but I was going to work as I work in a hospital. I usually work long hours and come home around 8 p.m. That evening I was coming home from work, and as I was walking towards the house, I could see it was in total darkness. At least from the front I saw no lights. As I'm getting closer, the hallway light switches on. I make a note in my head thinking, my housemate must have seen me and switched the light on for me. How nice. I get in the house and start talking. Our rooms are upstairs. I assume she's in her room. But as I'm nearly shouting, there's still no reply. I stop, think, that's strange. She's always home because of the pandemic. We couldn't really go anywhere, and she texts me usually. At this point, I feel weird and haven't left the hallway yet. I text her saying, please tell me you're home. She texts back. She nipped out to see a friend. We'll be back shortly. At this point, I'm panicking. I don't believe in ghosts or supernatural, so my initial thought is that there's someone else in the house. I grab the kitchen scissors and search the house. It's a small 2-bedroom house, no places to hide really. No basement, no attic, no crawl space. I find no one. I was really confused. My housemate said that maybe she forgot the light on. However, that's not possible, as I saw it being switched on from darkness to light. We also have cats, but it's very unlikely they could do that. Firstly, I've never seen them going for the switch before. Secondly, even if they jumped, the hallway light is kind of a difficult one to press down. If it was the kitchen light, I could have imagined the cat paw turn it on, but not the hallway light. Can the hallway light switch on by itself? Never seen that before. Has this happened to anyone else?